Every signature tells a story. Every handwritten note leaves behind a trail of human behavior, pressure patterns, movement, hesitation, and even intent. And sometimes those tiny details become the difference between truth and deception, innocence and guilt, and even millions lost through fraud. For centuries, documents have shaped the entire course of history through contracts, wills, confessions, ransom notes, passports, and even bank records. But what happens when those documents are questioned? Today's guest works in one of the rarest and most specialized professions in the forensic industry: forensic document examination. This discipline goes far beyond just handwriting analysis. Forged signatures, altered contracts, and even counterfeit documents. Ink variations, printing methods, as well as hidden impressions. All these characteristics left behind on paper. Forensic document examination has played a role in some of the world's most significant investigations. In 1932, the FBI established its first question documents unit, which assisted in the Lindenberg kidnapping to post 9/11 investigations, including recovering charred documents from the scene. Despite an increasingly digital world, document fraud remains a major threat. Modern examiners now analyze handwritten wills, contracts, manipulated PDFs, as well as digitally altered signatures. What makes today's conversation even more remarkable is that there are reportedly fewer than 10 sufficiently qualified forensic document examiners, and our guest is one of them. With over 25 years of experience in the field, international training, and highly specialized expertise, today we unpack the science, the psychology, the courtroom pressure, as well as the investigative power behind the documents many of us take for granted. Welcome to the show. You're now listening to Fraud O'Clock. Thank you for joining us on the show. Now, to everyone that doesn't know who you are outside of the profession, can you please just tell us what inspired you, to venture into the forensic document examination industry? And what further inspired you, to spend over 3 decades in that particular profession?
Katleo, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity. It's
Yes,
a
sir.
privilege and an honor to be able to inform people about forensic document examination. Yeah, it's a very interesting story. Forensic document examination found me. I didn't find it. And it's a true story. I was a law enforcement official, actively working out in the field. And towards the end of 1992, I realized that I've got to do replanning in my career as a police, as a law enforcement officer. A friend of mine was working in a forensic science laboratory. I did some inquiries, and the position was opening at the question document unit. Not knowing what I'm in for, I went there, had an interview, and my application was approved. I landed up at the forensic document examination unit. Walking into the forensic document examination unit, they give me a thick book. Osborne, question documents, written in 1911, high American English. Me being an Afrikaans guy, found it a bit difficult in the beginning to understand it. But I managed, and as I was going through the unit, from time to guys, officers, starting with my training, 3 months down the line in the training, I realized that I had a natural aptitude for forensic document examination. And I took like a duck to water. It became very interesting. And then I realized that I want to make this my career for the rest of my life. And that's how I ended up in forensic document examination. It's an intriguing field. It continuously challenges you. It tickles your curiosity the whole time. And it's a field which varies continuously as well, because every day you're working with something different, something new challenges, and the satisfaction of contributing to law and order in South Africa is unlimited. I mean, you cannot describe the satisfaction that you experience. So I ended up in the private sector in 1996, and I started my own practice. And since then, I've been full-time practicing as a forensic document examiner, dealing with various forensic document examination issues and examinations.
Wonderful, wonderful. I do understand that you hold international accreditations as well. What skills gap did South Africa have at the time that led you to go and get some of your qualifications abroad?
I won't call it accreditations. It's recognition, professional recognition. There's no skills gap between South Africa and the rest of the world. I can, with honesty, say I think that South Africa is on par, and I think in some fields ahead in the fields of forensic document examination. Although we are only few in the private sector, the police has a good complement of suitably qualified forensic document examiners.
For our listeners, hearing the term forensic document examination for the first time, how would you describe it to a layman? What work do you typically do, and what types of cases do you work on?
Interesting questions. In the past, we have been recognized or known as forensic handwriting and signature analysts. But that's a misconception of what we do as forensic document examiners. We deal with everything written and printed and give expert evidence on those issues. Everything that you can look on a document, on a toilet door, even on a wall, written on the back of a cell phone, even the printed labels, all falls within our field of forensic document examination. But in large, we're dealing with disputed signatures. And after that then follows handwriting and the rest of your disputed documents, which contain stamped impressions. We deal with even your staple marks in your documents, residue marks that's caused by copier machines. We deal with all those printing processes. We deal with indented writing. That's where you put 2 pages on top of one another, and you write on the first page. We can actually restore up to 5 pages down of information on indentations, dependent on how hard the pressure was. You know, when you were at school, so in this, let me for the people out there, let me just ask you not to do it. If you are looking at restoring indentations, please don't use a pencil and scratch over that surface to see whether you can restore or you can read the indentations. It damages the integrity and the examination value of a document. And that, in short, once we've dealt with the forensic document examination issues, we issue a report. That report gets dealt with in the judicial process. And then the end of the process, always the best part of it, I know a lot of people shy away from it, is giving expert evidence in court. Sometimes we get asked to express opinions on the accuracy or the value of certain security features on documents. Sometimes we get presented with documents to see whether we can forge it. I was one of those fortunate people that was approached by one of the cell phone companies in South Africa many years ago, and they needed to know how secure these scratch vouchers were, where you got your airtime from. And that caused a process leading up to 3-4 years, which I've advised them on the improvement of that specific technology. So the work of a forensic document examiner is very wide. Sometimes we get approached to authenticate art, a very controversial issue in respect of certain artists, but we will deal with that issue a little bit later on and expand on the problems that you experience outside of forensic document examinations that impact heavily on those kind of examinations.
Thank you for that. Just to also touch a bit on that again, what are some of the most common everyday documents that you constantly examine? And can you also, give some of our viewers tips on how to look out for forgeries themselves? If you have like a checklist that you constantly run through whenever you do your work.
There's no checklist for it. I think the best indicator is your sixth sense as a person when you deal with a document. And that's for the clients out there. They will sit down and they will look at the document and say, something is not right here. The signature does not look authentic. It appears that the printing is misaligned. On the feel of the paper, the pages feels different. The colors of the inks are not consistent throughout the document. The stamped impressions appears on every page in exactly the same position. The signatures look very similar. It doesn't look if the person varied in his signature. The signature looks of a type of a drawn quality. I know this person's signature. This person's signature in normal circumstances doesn't reflect on this document. But it's that sixth sense, that inkling that you get when you look at a document. And that's where they involved ourselves as document examiners. Say, listen, there's an authenticity issue on this document. Can you assist?
But I know with more official documents, they're, for instance, outlining that you should check for things like spelling errors, like if somebody forwards a false proof of payment, check for spelling errors, check for letterheads, check for, the names of directors, because, some forgers would put in the directors' names, previous directors' names, without realizing that there's actually been a structural change inside that particular institution. Have you ever had to deal with those types of formal question documents?
That becomes part of your dating process of a document, if that is the question. I failed to say that you've got two types of documents. You've got a question document. That's where your suspicions arise. So when you sit down, you look at the document, say, something is not right with this document. Something is not making sense. We didn't have this logo or this letterhead logo in that year.
Okay.
But this document reflects from that time. And then you get the disputed document. That is where somebody outrightly goes and say, well, I did not sign this document. Or this document is definitely not from our company. That is to distinguish between the two types of documents that we get to examine.
Okay, so just so that I understand correctly, you said when you do a dating process, and then you have your question documents, and then you have your disputed documents. Am I right?
The question is where you're dealing with your suspicions.
All right.
And the disputed document is a document where there is a formal dispute in respect of authenticity issues on the document.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that clarity.
Yeah, that plays into when a document examiner's expertise or services should be requested for. There's a tendency that your document examination is your emergency stop in a matter. You've dealt with everything, you did your investigations, and you are in court with the document as an investigator, and now suddenly a dispute arises.
That's when they call you.
That is that emergency stop type of approach. Question document examination should be applied right in the beginning of an examination, or of an investigation rather. That's where you as an investigator sit down. You have a look at your documents, and you know that these documents have to go through an exhibit process or become exhibits. In that instance, you must be proactive. You must already predict what can happen in court. It is investigative effective to deal with it in that way. It is also financially effective to deal with it. It's better to confront somebody with knowledge you already have. Then it becomes intelligence. You've built intelligence in your matter. And that's how forensic document examination actually should be applied as a tool during an investigative process. That is something that people really must take note of. Don't see the forensic document examiner as your last stop, because that emergency stop delays matters. It's not cost effective. And it gives the opposition time to strategize and maneuver. Our court processes are already behind. And then, most importantly of everything, it puts pressure on the document examiner, because now it becomes urgency. And a forensic document examiner working under pressure is a different ballgame.
No, highly understood.
Yeah.
And I think what also contributes to that pressure is that This is a very incredibly specialized field, and there are practically a handful of sufficiently qualified document forensic examiners. Why do you think the field is so rare, that specialization?
Katleo, it's an interesting question. There's something that I've been approached on in the past, and it all boils down to training. But the barrier of entry is very high for a forensic document examiner. It evolved from the time that you as a law enforcement or a police officer can join the forensic science laboratory and you do apprenticeship and structured training at the forensic science laboratory. Nowadays, with the new standard that's just been published recently last week, it requires a B degree. Now, in logic, any person that has to do a B degree, which is 3 or 4 years of study, and then another 2 years an apprenticeship at a formally recognized training institute, and then after that another year of mentorship. It's a tall order, and it really takes a special kind of person to commit, and you must be passionate about forensic document examination before becoming a forensic document examiner. And I think that is our biggest problem. In South Africa in particular, we don't have any training institutes outside of the forensic science laboratory. It does not exist in the private sector. So yes, the barrier of entry is very high.
And that's what contributes to the low number of professionals in that particular field.
Yeah, it contributes to the scarcity of the skill in South Africa in main.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. Would you say there is a sort of link between handwriting analysis and forensic document examination? Is it the same thing? Are they two different things?
Claire, what you're referring to is graphology. Graphology is not a recognized science. It's never been a recognized science. Forensic document examination is a recognized science. Secondly, graphology deals with personality traits of people. We deal with evidence that a particular person dealt with a document in a particular way, and it stands up in court as evidence. And I think that's the main difference, is that we don't predict the personality traits. We deal with the physical evidence on a document.
Right. So you're saying you cannot tell whether a particular document was drafted by Katleo and a forgery just based on the language style that I use in a particular document?
The key word in your question is language style. That resides within forensic linguistics, which is a recognized science. Forensic linguistics is something completely different to forensic document examination. There you deal with language and the way that language is used.
I think this speaks to how specialized this is, because I'm hearing a lot of different terminologies. You spoke about graphology, linguistics, and forensic document examination. Under which umbrella do all of them fall under? Do all of those other professions fall under forensic document examinations? Like, is forensic document examination the umbrella, or is it just a different field entirely too?
They're all separate.
All separate?
They're all separate, yeah. They don't find the house in the same spot.
Because we now live in a highly digitized world, and also that has been plagued with AI, how would you say document fraud has changed and some of the ways to detect it?
Interesting word you're using, plagued by AI. Yes. 2 years ago, I don't think we would have thought where we were going to be with AI and electronic devices and digital manipulation of signatures and documents. I think AI is used in the main to perfect the techniques. I think people are questioning AI to help them to build forgeries. In respect of handwriting and signatures, that's electronically captured. We talk about digitally captured signatures. I know legislation doesn't refer to digitally captured signatures. Maybe they will, legislation always catches up. Digitally captured signatures are signatures that is appended on a signature pad. And so is writing. Interestingly enough, people have the perception that paper is going to disappear. If you look at companies like SAPI and Mondi in South Africa, and the way that they are expanding and making paper, it hardly, confirms that way of thinking. But what do we see as clients of banks? You go into the bank and several other departments, and you sign on a signature pad. And we had this discussion earlier outside of this conversation. What value is there for the forensic document examiner? When we as forensic document examiner, I'm going to use signatures in particular to illustrate the answer to your question. We looked at those signatures and we wondered how hard was the pressure. We made a subjective observation on the speed of the signature, your flying finishes and things like that. These days, in the background of most of these signature pads, there is a capturing data that's running that deals with acceleration of signatures. The accelerator, and what time you execute the signature, even captured your air moves. Where you lift your pen. Early years, we sort of guessed about it. But we didn't really know. All of that is captured, and we have forensic software in which we then can read into that information. So it actually makes the examination much more effective. It even gives you a video playback of how the signature was executed or how a letter was written. Oh. It's interesting things. How hard was the pressure? How did it vary? It all puts it into statistics. So in the very near future, I think that the forensic examiner would be able to testify on the statistics and give the evidence in a statistical way in courts, which will be to the benefit of evidence and the strength and the validity of the evidence he gives in court. So yes, the continuous way of changing into the electronic environment is not a concern. There's a question of we have to upskill.
Of course.
We have to upskill. We talk about PDF documents. We talk about copy signatures. Interestingly enough, now that I mentioned copied signatures, there's an increasing question these days where people are saying, but that's my signature. Yes, but I didn't sign that document. And then subsequently to that, in examination, we find that it's a PDF document now. We all know a PDF document captures a lot of nice information in the metadata.
Oh, really?
But we as forensic document examiners are limited in a sense that we are not digital experts. So when you get to the gobbledygook, all those little funny signs and letters and figures, we are not experts in that, but there's a lot of readable data that we can use in the examination of a PDF document. Now, coming to that copied signature, I've written a piece on how a person should deal with that. That's actually a legal issue. It's not a forensic document examination issue. And it boils all down to permission. When was permission given that you can use that particular signature? That model from when to when was it valid, for what purposes it must be applied in documents, and a whole host of other things. So the forensic document examination environment is getting very, very interesting, and I think there's a bright future for a forensic document examiner with all of these challenges. And with AI that's coming in, it will create a lot of opportunities which we just have to upskill on.
Wow, that's very interesting. Now, without disclosing any confidential details, can you just walk us through, some of the most memorable cases that you've worked on?
Yes, I've actually got a list down here of about 5 cases which I would like to deal with.
Of course.
And it all speaks to particular issues in the forensic document examination environment. The first case that I've dealt with was in the arms industry that I like to deal with. I've actually written it into a chapter in a book that's going to be published in India in September month. It's a 3-part book, a 3-volume book of 850 pages. And I was privileged enough to be approached by forensic document examiners to contribute. And the first thing I want to deal with is ethical issues in forensic document examination. And this, I think it speaks very well to the ethics of a forensic document examination and what kind of situations you get exposed to, and we have to make very quick decisions. And this deals with the financial issue. I was approached by this client. He gave me a document. He actually sent it through by email at first. I looked at the signature, and from my preliminary view, I could really predict where this is going to go. But, you have to be skeptic. You have to go through the process. But it was your initial observation. And then he asks for a consultation. We sat down at the table in a consultation, person to person, and he started dealing with the matter, give me a lot of background, but it's a lot of information that's not needed. But typical client, they want you to know their story. And it wouldn't be good manners to always stop at clients, say, hey, no, don't. I'll address that issue, because we're also running a business, except for being just a forensic document examination. That's a whole new ball game.
Of course.
For people dealing in the private sector. In the state, you have sort of a barrier. You have an administrative department, and the investigators, in exception, will address a forensic document examiner directly. Yes. So there's a buffer.
Yes.
But in the private sector, we are dealing directly with people. So you have to upskill, you have to armor yourself with skills to deal with those specific issues. So coming back to this consultation, and the client said to me, this matter is 70 million rand. And he explained.
70 billion.
No, 70 million. Oh, yeah, just on that note, I've dealt with matters up to in the billions. 32 billion, I think was the largest one I did. Yeah, in this matter, the value of the matter was 70 million rand. And I already quoted him, because he asked for a quote when he presented me with the signature by email for the examination. And the conversation was ongoing and dealing with, at one stage, he produced the original document. And I had a quick look at the document whilst I was sitting at the table. And at the end of the matter, before we closed the consultation, the client said to me, so there's just one issue that I want to deal with. I said, yes, sir. He said, your fee. And I thought to myself, so it's one of those things again. People always want to negotiate on a fee. And he said, yeah, it's 5% of the loss. And I made a quick calculation in my head, and I came to something like 350,000 rand or something. And I took the document and I sent it back to him and said, sorry, sir, I can't assist you in this matter. I had to make a decision on that spot. 350,000 rand at that point in time would have been very handy. But you deal with your ethics. You deal with your independence, your objectivity, and the value that you bring to the judicial process. And you have to make those decisions. And then you become part of the corruptees in this country. And we know how serious corruption is.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's one of the difficult positions that you may find yourself in from time to time. And you have to deal with it decisively. You have to get in touch with your own inner core and know what your values are. Yes, that's on the financial side.
The ethics.
Pressures. Some countries that you work in, they talk about forgery. They want you to say it's forgery. We as forensic document examiners don't determine forgery. And I'll tell you why. We are not dealing with intent. We are not dealing with prejudice. We can't speak to those things. It's legal issues. We don't deal with loss or potential loss all that is part of the definition of forgery and uttering. And then we don't deal with misrepresentation, which is part of fraud again. We just determine scientific evidence on a document, which become contributory evidence in contributing to this decision by the investigator, whether it's a prima facie case in respect of fraud. And then ultimately those issues are decided by the judge or the presiding officer. So you must be very careful when you walk this road with the forensic document examiner to know exactly what your position is. It can be misleading. You can create misconceptions by speaking about forgery. Yeah, we use the word forgery, but then we use it in a reasonable man context, in description of a particular observation that we made. But we don't speak to an opinion on forgery itself. We had a discussion on art a little bit a while ago, and just to show you what the outside issues is that can impact on an examination. I was involved in a matter where we dealt with the signature of a very prominent person in South Africa on particular pieces of art and in books. Whilst examining this, I realized that we're dealing with copyright issues. Because when you make imprints or copies of particular art pieces, it's allowed if there's an agreement, you say, okay, you can produce 1,000 copies of these with my signature on. And I realized that, you'll find yourself in a very messy legal argument, which you don't form part of, because you just determined authenticity on a signature. Now, coming to authenticity is a very interesting thing. Disputes and questioned signatures is one thing, but to authenticate the signature is a completely different thing. Because you have a comparison process. Let's use the signature as an example, and just ignore the copyright issue on the one side, because that was an authentic signature in the sense that it was his signature. But it's non-authentic because it doesn't comply or adhere to the requirements of the copyright law. So what do you do as a forensic document examiner when you are confronted with these kind of examinations and you don't read wider or you don't understand why? You can find yourself in a very tight spot if you have to give expert evidence. Now that brings me back to authenticity, and let's just use a signature for that matter. There are 3 requirements in law by which you authenticate collected specimen signatures. Now, collected specimen signatures are those signatures that you sign during your normal course of business.
All right.
Okay, it's not requested specimen signatures. You will see in my book I refer to the 2 different processes. A book that was published by myself and Professor Jannie Horn, but we can touch on that later. Coming back to the authentication issue, in law there are 3 requirements. Either you admitted that you've signed that collected specimen signature, or somebody else that knows your signature very well, or somebody that was present during the signature of that specific signature. Then you have your question signature on the other side, which you compare these signatures with. And only then can you authenticate that signature if that legal requirements are fulfilled. So sometimes we as forensic document examiners stop short of authenticating signatures because the instruction is simply that the person that signed the collected specimen signature signed the question signature. Authentication is then taking place in court, where the collector of the specimen signatures testify to that fact. Only then the authentication process or the authentication circle is completed.
It's very complicated what you do. It is extremely complicated what you do. You have to be extremely precise, and you have to strictly abide by certain processes. I want you to tell me more about the courtroom pleasure.
Before getting to that,
Yes.
There's another matter I would like to add.
Of course.
That I've
Said you have
dealt
5
with.
now.
We as forensic document examiners are people that have emotions as well. And that's where you have to armor yourself. Many years ago, I did a matter where suicide was committed. That's where the husband and wife agrees to take out the whole family with the kids.
People actually agree to that?
Yes. What happened is they were in financial trouble. And the husband and wife agreed that they are going to commit suicide. But it's called filicide when the father and the mother decides together. And they took the 2 kids and they drove into the field and they gassed themselves. The husband took his gun with as well, for in case something was going to go wrong. But they've both prepared a document together and they signed it, which the people afterwards that went to their house discovered that was stuck on or sticked onto the fridge. I was approached and asked to examine the husband's the signatures at the bottom of these documents to see whether it's authentic signatures. And whilst I was examining this document, having the background because the investigator dealt with me, he informed me about what happened. I walked past my kids because I had a study at home as well. And I was sitting in my study and working. And I walked past my kids' room and you see your small kids lying there. And then you think by yourself, but you know, how can a father decide to do and act like that? Sitting in a vehicle, what do you tell your kids? You're putting a pipe inside your vehicle and you're running the engine. And they, because of their lung capacity, they die off very, very quickly. How do you deal with that? And then there's those emotions comes up in you as a dad. And yeah, you deal with it. So yeah, it took me longer than I usually do to finalize on a matter like that. So becoming a forensic document examiner is an intense issue, and you have to really sit down and decide on what you want to do.
It's not just dealing with documents.
Dealing with clinically with issues, yes.
Did you ever recover from something like that? I mean, do you really recover?
It becomes part of your history. It becomes part of your memory. And the good that comes from that is you armor yourself psychologically and emotionally to deal with coming issues in future. Yeah, but that's part of your development or your growth as a person.
Wow. So there's not just a technical side of it. There's also
a human side to it
the
as well.
psychological aspect to it as well. Yeah. And I think you only get better with that through experience.
I think you just learn how to deal better with it.
I'm really sorry you had to go through something like that.
It's fine. But I had to share it, because just to show you the human side of a forensic document examiner. It's not just a person that's sitting in a black box environment, receiving documents and examining and make cold decisions on issues.
Previously, we actually got into that, or do you have one last?
No, I think that encapsulates the world of a forensic document examiner. Your ethics, your emotions. You have to look after yourself psychologically, especially in the private sector. And that is maybe a little bit of guidance of people thinking into the future, yes, of getting involved in forensic document examination. It's not all this stars and glamorous world.
Not glamorous like this.
But we will get to the glamorous side now because your question previously was on courtrooms.
Yes. I think now we just want to touch on courtroom pressure. And if you can describe to us what is it like presenting under legal scrutiny, especially if what you say there has, great legal implications, massive legal implications, as well as financial implications. I think you did mention this a bit earlier, but can you just tell us what it's like presenting under that much scrutiny?
Let me begin with an experience I had recently, and we've touched on AI previously as well. I was in a disciplinary hearing, and a virtual disciplinary hearing a while ago. And during the cross-examination, here from the fifth question, I realized that something is amiss or something is wrong. And then I picked up on it. It was AI-generated questions posed by the cross-examiner.
Oh.
You know, AI, you can sometimes recognize AI questions. And the great thing about AI is that it can't think for itself. I'll tell you why. The moment you disturb or interrupt the line of questioning, AI doesn't keep up. So because it gives you questions with predictive answers. And they were strategizing with that. In this virtual meeting, they also had another forensic document examiner involved in this disciplinary hearing, sitting remotely. And I picked up on that by just keeping a close eye on the person that was asking me the questions, because I can see his eyes was moving between screens. And I actually put it to him. I said to him, "Sir, I just want to put it to you that you're asking me AI-generated questions." And he said to me, "No comment." And I caught him out on that. And another way that I've identified it is that he was using terminology. And me, myself, being a little bit deliberate, said to him, "Sir, I don't understand the word you've just used now, the terminology. Can you explain it to me?" And he couldn't. And that is when his whole world came apart. Although he kept me going for another lot of hours. But then it becomes repetitive. So that's one of the things that you experience, because we don't just testify in court. We testify virtually sometimes. We deal with disciplinary hearings, arbitrations, dealing with lower and higher court appearances. And then we appear in tribunals or arbitration tribunals international as well, where I had the privilege of testifying in Switzerland, which was a very interesting experience with those years. Having 9 legal representatives on one side and 3 on our side and 3 Americans that were the presiding officers. You know, it's an intimidating environment when you sit
only
there.
imagine.
And yeah, any court process or any judicial process, be it a disciplinary process or be it international tribunal arbitration hearing, is very intimidating because you're dealing with individuals that are very intelligent people. And your knowledge gets tested to the extreme. You're under pressure. You have to be effective. You have to convey your information in such a way that the reasonable man can understand it. You don't dwell into high technical terms. On that specific issue, it is something that you can take note of, is that when an expert starts to deal or dwell into using very high technological terms, it's just a front that he's putting up because he hides behind that. You will see during this conversation, well, I'm not making corporate talk here. Yes. And we talk the normal language that everybody can understand, because that's one of the irritating things about corporate talk, is that people hide behind high language or high words. What are you doing when you do that? You're putting up a fence so that people don't understand what you actually are saying. Or they have to guess or make their own assumptions about what you're saying. So you leave a lot of doubt out there. That's one of the things in court that you are very conscious of when you are testifying. Pressures, like I've explained to you, you have now in an AI-generated environment, your knowledge gets tested against world knowledge. And that's intimidating. So you have to be very careful how you deal with that. And then the conduct of the cross-examiner in court. I was involved with the training of junior advocates at one stage, myself and my former partner, with the with the Pretoria and Johannesburg bars. And they held real hearings, but it was done in the Palace of Justice with solicitors that from all over the world that attended this. And we were asked to, assist and testify so that the junior advocates can get a feel of how to, cross-examine. And part of it is to be intimidating as well. They will sometimes approach you loud. You have to learn how to deal with those kind of things and not get emotionally involved. We are all emotional creatures. You have to put your ego outside of the court's door. Leave it there. Don't take your ego inside the court, because that will get you into a lot of trouble. Humbleness is, I think, one of the good traits to have. Don't get upset by aggressive approach. This guy is just that lady is just doing her work. They try to unsettle you as a witness. But you get seasoned. Still up to now, many years later, you still get a little bit upset, and then you have to pinch yourself. Say, hey, but calm down, Those are some of the pressures that you experience in court. Sometimes the judges will interject and will asking clarity-seeking questions. On the point of clarity-seeking questions, I don't know whether people are aware, but you as an expert witness can ask clarity-seeking questions. You can, in court, ask with the permission of the judge to ask clarity-seeking questions. Sometimes you get approached, or you get a question that you don't fully understand. You may ask with the permission of the judge, and you address him directly. Say, my Lord, may I ask a clarity-seeking question? Not knowing that it puts pressure on you as an expert, because you think you are there just to answer questions. You may ask clarity-seeking questions, but it's allowed within certain parameters. You can't ask questions the whole time. The environmental circumstances in court sometimes plays a role. Sometimes the air conditioners doesn't work and it's hot. Sometimes you testify in areas or in courtrooms that there's not much space and they give you big files to deal with. You have to stand the whole time. You have to ask permission to sit, and sometimes you can. You in the rural areas, you sometimes get to courtrooms where there are no windows. All of those things build on pressure, make it that's uncomfortable for you as a forensic document examiner. And then you get to the disciplinaries. No discipline at all. I had a cross-examiner hanging across the table and labeling me as a racist, putting his finger in my face. You have to deal with all of those kind of pressures. Stay professional. So, testifying, giving expert evidence is an experience, but that is the cherry on top. That's what you ultimately works for, is to share that knowledge in court and to contribute in a meaningful manner to the judicial process.
Oh, thank you, Annie. I think our viewers will find that to be quite insightful. I know I did. Now, as we're nearing the end of our interview, I just have a few questions, and I always like to end off with asking what advice you can give some of our aspiring young forensic professionals, those who did not know about this specialization and would like to venture into it. Just briefly, what can you say to them?
Gatleo, the first word in the Bible should have been patience.
I agree.
Before it started with the first sentence. You have to have patience. You have to sit down and carve a clear career path to plan your career as a forensic document examiner. And then you have to actively pursue that. And the way of pursuing that is equip yourself with knowledge. And not just knowledge in the respect of forensic document examination. There are things like public speaking. You can go to some of the public speaking platforms, attend some courses, because ultimately you are dealing on a public platform when you go to court. You can have an excellent forensic document examiner, but if he can't or she can't give evidence, she doesn't contribute a lot. So that's one of the skills that you can work on. You can go to Toastmaster courses. Learn how to act in public. That is outside skills that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, the science itself at first. Secondly, You can go to the Center for Statistics and Applications of Statistics in Forensic Science, the CSAFE. Expose yourself to how to deal with statistics in the world of forensic document examination. And then that old little word that everybody uses it and throws it around. They're not really understanding what it's about. Logic. It's a very, very interesting thing. You know, logic is part of, or a subsection of, psychology, or philosophy rather. Covers basically just two wide departments or sections, which is formal logic and then your informal logic. Equip yourself with that knowledge, because logic is one of the engines of reasoning. If you can't reason properly and you can't interpret properly, you are just parroting what you've learned in the academic world. Because what is forensics about? It's about presenting logical arguments. Now, logic is the study of the axiomatic principles of rational thought and valid arguments. And that puts it in a nutshell. So, except for that, now looking at the field itself, first complete your studies in a B degree. I would recommend that you study BSc Forensics, so that you can get the grasp of the investigation environment as well as the science that sits in forensics, before you venture into forensic document examination. And only after that make a decision, once you've been exposed to forensics in a formal academic way.
Of course.
Then I would recommend that you look for organizations that you can deal with in the forensic environment. One of them is the American Society of Question Document Examiners. Approach them. Ask them to become a student member. Approach the UK organization, Chartered Society of Forensic Sciences. Become a student member. Get exposed to forensics in its broadest. And then, of course, speak to forensic document examiners and look for training opportunities. And that, in short, I think would give anybody guidance that wants to venture into forensic document examination.
Well, thank you for that, Jannie. I think from a student's perspective, they want to know whether a career like this is sustainable. So if we're talking numbers, you mentioned quite a big number previously, 70 million. How much of that would you necessarily take home? I know you don't really would take it home, but how are your fees structured? What's the entry level package look like?
Tatleo, yes. We work on an hourly fee. Being in the private sector, you have to run it like a business. And that is another skill that an apprentice or a person that wants to become in forensics or forensic document examination got to consider. Get to understand business. Get to understand risk management, because you all form part of a business decision. And just to backtrack a little bit, we are dealing with, in the main, clients that runs businesses or private people. If you don't understand how you impact on examinations or investigations, you will find it difficult to operate in that environment. Investigations and forensic examinations is a cost issue for any business. It's actually a grudge spend, because you don't plan for that. You can't plan for a forensic examination because you can't predict it. And so will the people in the investigation environment understand it. But ultimately it comes down to that you run a business, you have an office. So you got to work at your base costs first. And from that you plan your fee structure. But broadly speaking, yes, we work at an hourly rate and a daily fee and half-day fee. And of course then all the other expenses that's paid for, traveling that's charged at cost to company. That's more or less what your fee structure look like. If you really work hard, you will never become rich. And I always say that. You will make a living. You will not make a luxury living, but it's about a passion and your drive to make a contribution to a better world around you than anything else. Somehow you have to make money to put bread on the table. I always have this saying, as long as you can braai and have a beer, you are really making it.
Rich.
You don't need more than that. It's good balance. You'll never drive a fancy car. You won't stay in a double-story house or a big double-story house. But you can make a good living out of it, and you can actually run a business on forensic document examination. And coming to that, this is where it gets now very interesting. You know, people are using AI. And I decided I wanted to play around with AI as well.
All right.
And I went into AI and I asked AI, listen, you know, what does the future of forensic document examination look like? You know, there was a lot of things that I thought about over the years. And then there was one particular direction which I find very interesting, and it's something that I've already sort of planned for. What's after forensic document examination? You know, what can you deal with? And it's a forensic AI and document integrity consultant. Very interesting. You know, it's a ever-expanding science, this. You should not get tunnel vision and just think, well, I'll just examine signatures. There's a lot out there on the way that we can contribute to a safer document environment. You know, in businesses, you have document processes.
Yes.
But did people actually really sit down and look at the forensic side of a document? A document gets designed, gets implemented, and then it moves between departments and it ends up in an archive, whether it will be electronic or whether in a hard copy. But if you look at the chain of custody and the evidential value of that document, it's a whole different environment, because you've got to look at the legal implications of such a document. You know, looking at the stamp, it's a simple image that you find on a document. But it's more to that stamp than just sits there and that looks different to another stamp. You know, the stamp had to be designed by a person. There's got to be specifications to it. There's got to be communication from the client to the manufacturer. There's got to be changes on specifications. If you start recording all of that information, it's all forensic information. It's all information that speaks to the authenticity of that. So, yeah, you can become an international expert, you can become an arbitrator, and then you can qualify yourself in the training environment. So that, in short, are the possibilities and the future of forensic document examination. Forensic document examination future is bright. You just got to pin down the opportunities in that.
Wonderful,
And
thank you.
Don't get tunnel vision.
No, thank you for that, Jannie. Now, just before we close off, I know you mentioned that you're about to publish, or it's already published, the book that you wrote together with Professor Juanita Horn from UNISA.
Yes.
So if you can just tell us more about it and where we can find it.
Yes, it's actually in your library as well, here, the ACFE.
Oh, wonderful. Clearly,
Yes.
I don't read that much of our stuff.
You can get it in electronic and in hard copy from Juta. This book deals with the aspiring forensic document examiner, the attorney or the legal representative that seeks guidance, and even judges to broaden their knowledge on forensic document examination and some of the legal implications of that. So it speaks in broad on a very high level to forensic document, aspiring forensic document examiners and legal experts out in the market.
Okay, great. Now, Jannie, where can some of our viewers reach you? I know you released standards on forensic document examination. That's on our website. But alternatively, where can our members reach you?
On your website, there's a part that deals with expert sources, and I'm listed under that under proscriptive document examination.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jannie, for your time. This was much appreciated. This was very insightful. To that effect, that's all we have today, folks. See you on the next episode of Fraud O'Clock.